Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about some of the best mods to enrich your campaign experience in Total War Warhammer 3. Now all of these are going to be for everyone, and if you're a new player I would not necessarily recommend many of the mods on this list, but if you're tired of playing the same campaign over and over again, but do you want a more interesting experience right out of the gate, some of these mods are going to be for you. At number 5, we have Autoresolve mods. So there's all kinds of Autoresolve mods. There is an Autoresolve mod that gives you a modifier to every single battle in the game, so you don't have to fight a bunch of these minor inconsequential battles. Like anyone who's played Carl Francis' campaign knows how inconsequential this particular battle is. Unless you're a new player, in which case I would recommend playing these battles so you can actually get a feel for it. One of the mistakes I'm sure a lot of people make is that the Autoresolve battles are very, very easy by default and think themselves, oh, it's not really going to matter. It does matter. But it's not just about adding an Autoresolve modifier to counteract difficulty modifier, especially if you set battle difficulty too high. So battle difficulty affects three things. It affects the aggressiveness of the AI on the campaign map, or how it uses its resources. You set this to low, the AI is going to be less aggressive. Then it affects battle tactics, and it affects Autoresolve result. It's not especially great that it's three things tied to one bar over there, but it is how the game does work. I would certainly wish to split apart the AI aggressiveness on the campaign map and the battle tactics compared to the actual Autoresolve result. But even then, by default, the Autoresolve is going to be pretty bad. But then, we also have settlement Autoresolve. Every single settlement, both for you and the AI, has an Autoresolve benefit inherently to it. And this is ridiculous, because they shouldn't. Like, anyone who's fought sieges in the game knows that sieges are the kind of battles where you can win them with far fewer casualties than a field battle. Like, the hardest battles I ever fight in a campaign are not sieges. I might lose a siege, but, you know, I can always have enough movement range to come back if I feel I'm not going to take it in a single go. Field battles, you know, you might be forced in a field battle, whereas when you're fighting an offensive siege, you should have the flexibility to decide, okay, how much do I want to commit with that? So that's one of the reasons they're ridiculous. But anyway, every minor settlement and major settlement, so walled settlement and regular settlement, is going to have some kind of Autoresolve benefit. There are mods that remove that benefit. Yes. On top of that, there's also mods that remove settlement battles altogether from the game. So sieges, again, are not raid battles from a gameplay perspective. It's far more interesting to fight a field battle. But the problem is, even on legendary difficulty, the AI may cower behind their walls in a major city. Those might be easier battles. It is more interesting to be forced to fight a field battle. So there are mods that remove both the minor settlement battles and the major settlement battles. So you no longer have sieges, you no longer have any kind of settlement layout, you're just going to have field battles. And that does make the campaign overall better. So that's number 5, everything related to Autoresolve. Number 4, you can consider the siege situation, if you will. Then we have to talk about Warband upgrade. When you're playing a campaign, one of the worst things is that you start a campaign and you start recruiting some units, but after a couple of turns, or dependent on the pacing you have, you will eventually want to replace these units with better units. But you kind of get attached to those units that you have, like, you know, the initial Reichsguard unit that Karl has, the Great Sword, the, you know, Halberdiers that he has, for instance. Well, not so much. But handgunners. Why would you keep handgunners when you can get Null Ironsides and Hochland long rifles? You wouldn't. So instead, Warband upgrade does allow you to replace to upgrade the units that you're using in a campaign. Now, the reason this is great is because certain races that do have an annoying situation in regards to getting higher tier units by default. So, for instance, in a Campaign campaign, you can win an entire Campaign campaign, or the relevant points of a campaign, so early on that you're only really going to use Jade Warriors, maybe Peasant Archers, or Jade Warrior Crossbowmen. That is not a really compelling army to play every single campaign as Campaign. So having a benefit that gives you the ability of upgrading those units adds a lot of army variety available to you and makes you more attached to those units. There's also a Warband upgrade cross race mod. So if I let's say were to get allied with someone else, I can I can then use that system to upgrade those units from my allies. Tied together with this is also allied recruitment. So there is a cap of allied recruitment per army of 4. There is a mod that removes that cap. You'll still have to pay allegiance points, but it adds so much in terms of army diversity. Like, you want to play an Empire campaign and have access to gyrocopters, you can do, or gyrobombers, or thunder barges, you can do so. You want to have dwarf infantry or ogre units, you can do so, without the kind of limits that you have in the game by default. And I think that is a really, really solid system, just removing the allied recruitment cap. I kind of wish there were ways to remove those caps and improve the allied recruitment as your diplomacy goes forward in a campaign. Maybe something CA should look at going forward in a game. But it is just, not necessarily in Warhammer 3, but in a future game as well. So Warband upgrade cross race, Autoresolve, siege removal, and allied recruitment. Those are great things. Then you have recruit, defeat the legendary lords. Now, recruit, defeat the legendary lords doesn't just work for you as a player. So number 2, I would say recruit, defeat the legendary lords mod. It's a bit difficult because, like, you have Autoresolve, then you have Warband upgrade, then you have allied recruitment that you could consider that. But yeah, at number 2, I would put the recruit, defeat the legendary lords mod. The great benefit of recruit, defeat the legendary lords mod is if a legendary lord gets wiped out, the only way you're really going to be able to get them in your campaign, I would not do this in a dwarf campaign for the record, but the only way you're going to get them is if you go to, say for instance, I'll actually use the Grumbrindle example, before the dwarf rework. Or let's say Malekith. Let's say you're playing Dark Elf campaign, Malekith gets wiped out, right? The only way you can revive him and get him as a Confederation option is to take Nagrand, create a rebellion over there in the settlement that he starts in, and then his faction can be revived and you can manipulate the situation in a Confederation. It is an annoying as hell system. And so with Recruit the Legendary Lords mod, you can get those Legendary Lords. But it's not just for you. It's also for other races as well. So I think this Recruit Defeat the Legendary Lords does add a great deal more diversity in your campaigns, because it means when Legendary Lord factions get wiped out, they're still going to be playing around the campaign map. It would take the entire race being wiped out from the campaign map to not encounter them. So for instance, if I'm playing a campaign as Karl Franz, I can kill Grom and Kemmler pretty quickly. And it is a shame to just completely remove them from the campaign map and never have to deal with them again. So from my point of view, Recruit Defeat the Legendary Lords mod is really beneficial to spice things up, especially in a longer campaign, but any kind of campaign that you're playing. And then finally, at number 1, we have the mod configuration tool and the campaign configuration tool. So you're going to need the mod configuration tool, the MCT, and all of these mods are going to be in the description below. But you can get the ultimate campaign configuration tool. It still works. Now, it doesn't necessarily have the settings I'd want. Like, I would want instant, recruit rank so I could, get a good amount of variety from the beginning. But you have a bunch of options over here in terms of diplomacy, in terms of climate. You can add a mod that removes any climate penalties on this list, by the way. Remove climate penalties. But that's a great thing, by the way. Like, that's really an honorable mention if there is one. Things like true unit size, so you can have bigger armies if your computer can handle the performance, those things like that. But what the Ultimate Campaign Configuration tool does is it allows you and AI to get far more interesting things happening in a campaign than you would otherwise. So, for instance, let's consider research. In most campaigns, research is kind of a done deal. Like, you research a couple of very useful texts and you ignore everything else, right? Because it takes so long to research useful things that that you're always going to prioritize things that are important, things like Imperial Architects for Empire. So a lot of other things, unless they can be done quickly, you're just going to leave by the wayside until you pretty much won your campaign. And it doesn't matter what campaign pacing you pick, unless you're playing like plus 80 turns, 100 turn campaigns regularly. And even then, you're still going to want to go down one particular tree just because it's that much better. Like for the Empire, you got Imperial Architects, Manualism, and then maybe mass-produced small ammunition, and of course, like some kind of unique research. Everything else, just not really worth it whatsoever. Sure, it does mean you'll get all the research, but this also applies to the AI. Because it's not just the player who's benefiting from technology, it's also the AI. And that makes it more interesting, because one of the problems the AI has is actually accessing a lot of the more interesting things in a campaign, given the current meta of the game. Like, the current meta is very fast-paced early game. Like, you succeed or lose in the early game. Now, sure, you can play a long campaign and, you know, the dwarves start producing thunder barges and all that. I've only faced those in an endgame price, personally, in the thousands of hours I have in Warhammer 3, unmodded, I should add. Unmodded, modded, doesn't matter. I've only ever faced dwarf thunder barges in an endgame crisis. So, it's not really... It's really a shame in that respect, because there's some really, really cool stuff over there. And you can change a couple of things as well, like unit stats. You can make things harder if you want to. You can give yourself recruitment slots, so you're not spending, you know, a dozen turns just to recruit one army. So you can recruit things faster, like horde recruitment slots, local recruitment slots, global recruitment slots. I didn't change anything for the AI in terms of this, because the AI already has plenty of benefits in that respect. But yeah, I gave the player recruitment slots, and I gave everyone higher ranks. Now, this actually makes battles so much more interesting, because I'm sure at one point in your campaign, you're starting to deal with factions. They might have a couple of really high-level lords, but most of their lords, after a while, will just be low-level ones. But by making lords higher level, and you can change this throughout the course of your campaign. Like, I may start them, you know, at legendary lords at rank 14. Let me tell you, dealing with rank 14 legendary lords is a far more interesting battle situation. You could use Autoresolve mods to skip those battles, but the point of Autoresolve mods is to avoid the annoyance, not to avoid battles. It's how you use it. And so you can use this in combination with other things to make battles far more interesting, because dealing with higher ranked heroes and lords is going to be a far greater challenge. It's up to you where you want to go with that. One of the things I would certainly use would be growth benefits, so you don't have to worry about that, and then economic benefits. Now, the AI has so many economic benefits, I will not touch a lot of things. I would give the AI some more background income, just so that they have more of that, and I would actually increase their upkeep, because I'm sure you've seen a lot of AI armies just sitting around. The reason I'd increase their upkeep is because if you decrease their upkeep already is kind of near zero or very, very low with just with 1-2 armies. So increasing their upkeep means that they'll recruit fewer armies, but they won't just fill them with complete trash. So yes, actually limiting the AI's perspective there is going to help a great deal. You could, and I'm considering legendary here, but yeah, give them more money, but also increase their upkeep to kind of make up for that. As for you, the player, reduce your upkeep cost, reduce your building cost, and that way you won't be spending all your money on buildings. Like, the AI has so many buildings, like you could, you know, attach, let's say, a 20% structure cost for the AI over there, but then they'll have so much money available to them that it will be completely ridiculous. So you kind of want the AI to spend money. You don't want it to just, you know, build up tens of thousands of gold. They still will, I should add. They still freaking will, especially with an increase of background income. They still will get a good amount of money. But reducing building costs and upkeep costs doesn't mean that you trivialize your campaign. What it does mean is you're going to be dealing with more variety in the course of your campaign. And that is a great thing. The final mod associated with this is a building construction time mod. So I don't have it enabled here, but there is a mod that allows buildings to be built faster, which means you have access to heroes, unit variety, building variety in your campaign. So combine the ultimate campaign configuration tool with faster build times, and you can have a much more varied and interesting campaign that will play very differently and be a lot more interesting in quite a few ways. You can also use something like customized starting army mod that allows you to get yourself a really, really good army early on in your campaign from the very get-go, if you just want that extra variety. So variety to me is important, and this is what all of these things are about. Reduce the grind, which is fighting a bunch of minor settlement battles in particular. You do need a combination of both Autoresolve mods and settlement removal, so you don't have to fight, like, you know, against, like, freaking tier 1 garrisons with 7 pathetic units that your legendary lord can defeat. Probably level 1, right? So remove that annoyance, remove the waiting period with building up settlements, and just go have fun. That's what I would dare say. And I think that does make for a more varied and interesting campaign experience from my point of view. Sure, others will disagree, but that is where I stand on this issue. And I kind of wish Creative Assembly gave some of these options at least as part of campaign customization. One of the things I really liked about Pharaoh is that it did allow this campaign customization, and it made it so much better for it. It was one of the good things about Pharaohs. And now in Dynasties is a pretty solid game. Like, really. Not the best game. It could use more improvements, it could use more support, but they did improve quite a few things over there. Lethality was a real improvement in terms of battles, which was one of the main problems. But anyway, that's all I had to say. Questine here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.